You think of a song you haven't heard in months, and seconds later, it plays on the radio. You dream of a person you haven't seen in years, and they call you the next day. You're struggling with a decision, and a stranger on the street says the exact words you needed to hear. You call it luck. You call it coincidence. You call it a strange quirk of probability. The psychiatrist Carl Jung called it synchronicity, and he proposed it was not random chance, but evidence of a hidden order in the universe, a secret dialogue between your mind and reality. What if the universe is not a cold mechanical system of billiard balls bouncing off each other in empty space, but an intelligent, living field that responds to the frequency of your consciousness? What if every coincidence is a signal, a breadcrumb on a path that your deeper self is trying to show you, and you've been trained to ignore it? The pain you feel is the pain of disconnection. You've been taught that you are a biological accident, a random configuration of atoms, floating through a meaningless void where events unfold according to blind chance and cold physics. In this worldview, you are powerless. You are a victim of circumstance, a leaf blown by the wind, waiting for luck to smile upon you or for tragedy to strike without warning. This is the existential crisis of the modern mind, the belief that your thoughts, your intentions, and your inner world have no connection to the outer world, that the universe is indifferent to your existence. You feel isolated, adrift, searching for signs of meaning in a reality that science has told you is fundamentally random. But what if that entire worldview is incomplete? What if the separation between inner and outer, between mind and matter, is an illusion created by a limited understanding of reality? The promise of this video is to shatter that illusion. You will learn the science and psychology behind synchronicity, the hidden mechanism that connects your consciousness to the fabric of reality itself. You will discover that the weird coincidences in your life are not statistical noise, but signal. They are messages from a deeper intelligence, a guidance system that operates beyond the reach of linear causality. You will transform from a passive observer of random events into an active participant in a meaningful universe. You will learn to recognize these events not as flukes, but as a compass, a navigational tool provided by your unconscious mind and the living cosmos. This is not mysticism. This is a new physics of meaning, a protocol for tuning your consciousness to the frequency of the universe. Carl Jung was not a mystic. He was a scientist who dared to explore the boundary where psychology meets the unknown. He spent decades documenting thousands of cases where the inner world of dreams, visions, and emotions mirrored outer events in ways that defied probability. He collaborated with Nobel Prize-winning physicists to understand the mechanism. He developed a rigorous framework to distinguish true synchronicity from mere chance, and he concluded that these events are not supernatural. They are natural phenomena that reveal a deeper layer of reality, a layer where mind and matter are not separate, but two expressions of a single unified field. This video is your practical guide to understanding the physics of miracles and the algorithm of luck. You will learn the exact protocol Jung used to cultivate synchronicity, the fatal mistakes that cause people to miss the messages, and the scientific bridge that connects ancient wisdom to quantum physics. You will discover why the universe speaks in symbols, why your dreams are the key to decoding reality, and how to transform your life from a random walk through chaos into a meaningful journey guided by invisible threads. This is not a theory you study. This is a technology you activate. By the end of this video, you will have a new operating system for your consciousness, one that allows you to see the patterns that have always been there, waiting for you to notice. If you are ready to see the invisible threads that connect your inner world to the outer world, if you are ready to stop calling it coincidence and start calling it communication, comment "connected" below. This is your signal to the algorithm and to the universe that you are ready to participate. And as we decode the science of synchronicity together, subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell, because we are building a library of forgotten knowledge, a modern mystery school for the architects of the new paradigm. Let us begin. Synchronicity is not magic, and it is not coincidence in the ordinary sense. It is a specific phenomenon that Carl Jung defined with scientific precision, a meaningful connection between an inner, psychological event and an outer, physical event, where the two are not linked by a direct cause and effect relationship. The key word is meaningful. Not every coincidence is a synchronicity. If you think of rain and it rains, that is not necessarily synchronistic because rain is common and the connection may lack personal significance. But if you dream of a rare golden beetle, a creature you have never seen in your life, and at the exact moment you are describing that dream to someone, a real beetle of that exact type taps on the window, that is synchronicity. The connection is acausal, meaning your dream did not cause the beetle to appear, and the beetle's appearance did not cause your dream. Instead, both events are participating in a single, unified pattern of meaning that exists outside of linear time and causality. To understand this, you must first abandon the assumption that causality is the only principle that governs reality. In the Newtonian worldview, every event is the result of a prior cause, like dominoes falling in sequence. A cause is B, B causes C, and so on, in an unbroken chain stretching back to the Big Bang. This model works brilliantly for predicting the motion of planets and the behavior of machines, but it fails to account for a vast category of human experience, the experience of meaning. Meaning is not a physical force. It does not push or pull. It does not travel through space at the speed of light. Yet meaning is real. It shapes your decisions, your emotions, and your sense of identity. Jung proposed that meaning is a fundamental principle of the universe, just as real as gravity or electromagnetism, but operating according to different rules. Synchronicity reveals that meaning can organize events without the need for physical causation. Imagine your psyche as a radio transmitter, broadcasting on a specific frequency. That frequency is determined by your emotional state, your questions, your obsessions, and your unconscious complexes. The universe, in Jung's model, is not a dead, inert collection of matter. It is a living field, a cosmic psyche, and it is also broadcasting. When your inner frequency aligns with a pattern in the outer world, the two resonate, and an event occurs that carries meaning for you and you alone. This is not a metaphor. Jung believed this was a literal description of how the universe operates at a level deeper than the mechanical causality we observe on the surface. The concept challenges the Cartesian split, the idea that mind and matter are fundamentally separate substances. Descartes gave us a universe divided into two realms, the res cogitans, the realm of thought and consciousness, and the res extensa, the realm of physical matter. In this model, the mind is a ghost trapped in a machine, a subjective illusion floating above an objective, material world. Synchronicity shatters this division. It demonstrates that the inner world of thoughts, dreams, and emotions can mirror the outer world of physical events in ways that are far too specific and far too frequent to be explained by chance. The two realms are not separate. They are two sides of the same coin, two perspectives on a single underlying reality. Jung called this underlying reality the unus mundus, a Latin term meaning one world. The unus mundus is the unified field from which both mind and matter emerge. It is the source code of reality, the invisible substrate that contains all potential patterns, all possible meanings, waiting to be actualized. In the unus mundus, there is no separation between subject and object, between observer and observed. Everything is interconnected in a web of meaning. Synchronicity is a moment when the veil between the surface world of separate objects and the deep world of unified meaning becomes thin, and you catch a glimpse of the hidden order. This is not a religious idea, it is a scientific hypothesis, one that Jung developed in collaboration with some of the greatest minds of the 20th century. He worked closely with Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who was one of the founders of quantum mechanics. Pauli himself experienced profound synchronicities and was convinced that the new physics was revealing a reality far stranger than the materialist worldview could accommodate. Together, Jung and Pauli explored the possibility that the acausal connections observed in quantum mechanics, such as the instantaneous correlation between entangled particles, might be related to the acausal connections observed in synchronicity. They proposed that both phenomena point to a deeper level of reality where the laws of classical physics break down and a new principle, the principle of meaningful connection takes over. To experience synchronicity is to experience proof that you are not alone in a random universe. It is to receive a message from the cosmos itself, a message that says, "I see you. Your inner world matters. The questions you hold, the emotions you feel, the dreams you dream. These are not isolated events happening inside your skull. They are part of a larger pattern, a cosmic conversation, and I am responding." This is why synchronicity often feels numinous, a term Jung borrowed from the scholar of religion Rudolf Otto. Numinous experiences are those that evoke awe, wonder, and a sense of encountering something sacred or otherworldly. When a true synchronicity occurs, you feel a chill, a sudden expansion of awareness, a sense that the universe has just winked at you. But synchronicity is not passive. It is not a gift from the gods that you wait around to receive. It is a phenomenon that you can cultivate, a frequency you can tune into, a dialogue you can initiate. The universe is always broadcasting, but most people are not listening. Their minds are too noisy, too cluttered with distractions, too locked into the assumption that the outer world is separate from the inner world. They experience synchronicities, but they dismiss them as just coincidences, and the dialogue is cut short. The protocol Jung developed is designed to quiet the noise, to sharpen your perception, and to train your consciousness to recognize the patterns that have always been there. The first step in understanding synchronicity is to recognize that it is not about prediction or control. You cannot force the universe to send you a sign on demand, like ordering a pizza. Synchronicity arises spontaneously, often when you least expect it, and always in response to a genuine need for meaning or direction. It is the universe's way of answering a question you have asked, consciously or unconsciously. The question might be explicit: should I take this job? Or is this relationship right for me? Or it might be implicit, a deep, unnamed yearning for guidance, for confirmation, for a sense that your life has purpose. The universe does not respond to idle curiosity. It responds to emotional intensity, to the questions that matter. Jung observed that synchronicities tend to cluster around moments of crisis, transition, or transformation. They occur when you are at a crossroads, when the old structures of your life are breaking down and the new structures have not yet formed. In these liminal spaces, the boundary between the conscious and unconscious mind becomes permeable, and the unconscious sends up symbols, dreams, and visions that seek to guide you. The outer world, attuned to the same pattern, produces events that mirror those inner symbols. The result is a moment of recognition, a sudden alignment of inner and outer, a flash of insight that cuts through confusion and provides clarity. This is why synchronicity is so often accompanied by a sense of inevitability, as if the event was always meant to happen. You look back and realize that the signs were there all along, that the pattern was unfolding beneath the surface of your awareness, and the synchronistic event was simply the moment when the pattern broke through into consciousness. It is a reminder that your life is not a series of random, disconnected moments, but a coherent narrative, a story being written by a deeper intelligence that knows where you need to go, even when your conscious mind is lost. Jung's great insight was that the unconscious mind is not merely personal, it is also collective and cosmic. The personal unconscious contains your individual memories, traumas, and repressed desires, but beneath that lies the collective unconscious, a vast repository of universal symbols and archetypes shared by all of humanity. And beneath that, Jung speculated, lies an even deeper layer, a connection to the unus mundus itself, the unified field of meaning that encompasses all of reality. When you experience a synchronicity, you are not just receiving a message from your personal unconscious, you are receiving a message from the cosmos, a signal that your individual life is part of a larger, meaningful whole. This is the promise of synchronicity, to restore your sense of belonging in the universe. In a world that has been disenchanted by reductionist science, where life is explained as nothing but chemistry and consciousness is dismissed as an illusion, synchronicity is a re-enchantment. It is proof that the universe is not a dead machine, but a living, intelligent presence that cares about your journey. It is proof that your thoughts matter, that your intentions have power, that the boundary between mind and matter is not as solid as you have been taught. And it is proof that you are not a stranger in this world. You are a participant in a cosmic drama, a co-creator of reality, a node in a vast network of meaning. The question is no longer whether synchronicity is real. The question is, are you ready to see it? Are you ready to abandon the comfortable illusion of a random universe and step into the uncertainty of a meaningful one? Are you ready to take responsibility for the dialogue, to hold your questions with intention, to pay attention to the signs and to act on the guidance you receive? Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize that the universe is speaking to you, you can no longer pretend that you are alone. The conversation has begun, and it will not stop until you learn to listen. The bridge between Carl Jung's psychology and modern physics is not a metaphor. It is a literal collaboration between two of the greatest minds of the 20th century. Wolfgang Pauli, the physicist who formulated the Pauli exclusion principle and won the Nobel Prize in 1945, was not only a genius of quantum mechanics, he was also a patient and close friend of Carl Jung. Pauli came to Jung suffering from vivid, disturbing dreams and a sense of inner fragmentation, and over the course of their work together, Jung analyzed over 1,000 of Pauli's dreams. What emerged from this collaboration was a radical hypothesis: that the strange counterintuitive phenomena of quantum mechanics and the strange meaningful coincidences of synchronicity were two expressions of the same underlying principle, a principle that operates beyond the reach of causality and connects mind and matter at the deepest level of reality. In classical physics, the universe is a clockwork mechanism. Every event is determined by prior causes, and if you know the initial conditions of a system with perfect precision, you can predict its future with perfect accuracy. The universe is fundamentally deterministic, and the role of the observer is irrelevant. You are a passive spectator watching the gears turn, and nothing you think or feel has any influence on the physical world. But quantum mechanics shattered this worldview. Experiments like the double-slit experiment revealed that at the subatomic level, particles do not have definite properties until they are observed. An electron exists in a state of superposition, a cloud of probabilities, and it is the act of measurement that collapses the wave function and forces the electron to choose a definite position. The observer is no longer passive. The observer is an active participant in the creation of reality. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community, and it led to decades of philosophical debate about the nature of reality. If observation affects the outcome of an experiment, then what is the role of consciousness in the physical world? Is consciousness a fundamental feature of the universe, or is it an epiphenomenon, a byproduct of brain activity with no causal power? Pauli and Jung were convinced that consciousness is fundamental, that it is not produced by matter, but is woven into the fabric of reality itself. They proposed that the collapse of the wave function in quantum mechanics and the emergence of a synchronistic event in psychology are both moments when the potential becomes actual, when the undifferentiated field of possibilities crystallizes into a specific, meaningful form. The concept that connects these two phenomena is quantum entanglement, one of the most bizarre and well-established predictions of quantum mechanics. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected in such a way that measuring the state of one particle instantaneously affects the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. If you measure the spin of one entangled electron and find it spinning up, the other electron will instantaneously spin down, even if it is on the other side of the galaxy. This correlation is not transmitted by any known force or signal. It is instantaneous, faster than light, and it violates the principle of locality, the idea that objects are only influenced by their immediate surroundings. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, and he hated it because it seemed to violate the laws of relativity. But experiment after experiment has confirmed that entanglement is real. Jung saw in entanglement a perfect physical analogy for the acausal connection between mind and matter that he observed in synchronicity. Just as two entangled particles remain connected across space, your inner psychological state and an outer physical event can remain connected across the boundary that separates mind from matter. The connection is not mediated by a physical signal, It is a correlation in the underlying field of meaning, the unus mundus. When you hold a question or an intention with emotional intensity, you are, in a sense, entangling your consciousness with the patterns in the external world that resonate with that question. And when the conditions are right, the pattern manifests as a synchronistic event, a moment when the inner and outer worlds align in a way that carries meaning for you. This is not to say that your thoughts directly cause physical events in the way that pushing a button causes a light to turn on. Synchronicity is not telekinesis. It is not mind over matter in the crude sense. It is something more subtle and more profound. It is a resonance, a harmonic alignment, a moment when the frequency of your consciousness matches the frequency of a pattern in the external world, and the two lock into phase. The physicist David Bohm, a protege of Einstein and a contemporary of Jung, developed a theory called the implicate order, which describes reality as a vast, undivided wholeness. In Bohm's model, the universe we perceive, the explicate order, is like the surface of an ocean, and beneath it lies the implicate order, a deeper dimension where everything is enfolded into everything else. What we perceive as separate objects and separate events are actually projections from this deeper unified field. Synchronicity, in this framework, is a moment when the implicate order becomes visible, when the hidden connections that exist at the deepest level of reality break through into the explicate order and manifest as a meaningful coincidence. The collaboration between Jung and Pauli was an attempt to develop a unified theory of reality, one that would integrate psychology and physics, mind and matter, meaning and mechanism. They called this theory psychophysical parallelism, and it proposed that mental and physical events are not causally related, but are parallel expressions of a single, underlying reality. The unus mundus is the source of both. When you experience a thought or a dream, that is the unus mundus expressing itself in the language of the psyche. When you experience a physical event, that is the unus mundus expressing itself in the language of matter. Most of the time, these two languages seem unrelated, like two parallel lines that never meet. But in moments of synchronicity, the lines converge, and you see that they were always describing the same reality from different perspectives. This theory has profound implications for how we understand consciousness. If consciousness is not produced by the brain, but is a fundamental feature of the universe, then the brain is not a generator of consciousness. It is a receiver, a tuning device that filters and focuses the universal field of consciousness into the localized experience of an individual self. This is why Jung believed that the unconscious mind extends far beyond the individual. The personal unconscious is like a radio station broadcasting on a unique frequency, but it is embedded in the collective unconscious, which is like the entire electromagnetic spectrum containing all possible frequencies. And the collective unconscious, in turn, is embedded in the unus mundus, the unified field of consciousness and matter, the ground of all being. Synchronicity, then, is a technology for accessing this deeper field. It is a way of tuning your individual consciousness to the frequency of the universal consciousness, the intelligence that orchestrates the dance of particles and planets, the evolution of galaxies, and the unfolding of your personal destiny. When you experience a synchronicity, you are not receiving a message from an external God or a supernatural entity. You are receiving a message from the deeper layers of your own being, the layers that are connected to everything. You are remembering that you are not a separate, isolated ego trapped in a bag of skin, but a wave in the ocean of consciousness, a node in the cosmic network, a holographic fragment that contains the whole. The scientific establishment has been slow to embrace these ideas, and for good reason. Science demands repeatability, predictability, and control, and synchronicity is none of these things. You cannot produce a synchronicity on demand in a laboratory. You cannot measure it with instruments. You cannot reduce it to an equation. But the inability to measure something does not mean it is not real. Love is real, beauty is real, meaning is real, and none of these can be weighed on a scale or observed through a microscope. Jung was proposing a new kind of science, a science of quality rather than quantity, a science that takes subjective experience seriously and seeks to understand the patterns that connect the inner and outer worlds. Modern physics is beginning to catch up. the discovery of quantum entanglement, the observer effect, and the holographic principle in cosmology are all pointing toward a reality that is far more interconnected and far more mysterious than the mechanistic worldview can accommodate. Physicists like John Wheeler have proposed that the universe is participatory, that reality is not a pre-existing stage on which events unfold, but a co-creation between the observer and the observed. Wheeler's famous thought experiment, the delayed choice experiment, demonstrated that a decision made by an observer in the present can retroactively determine the behavior of a particle in the past, suggesting that time itself is not as linear as we assume. If the future can influence the past, then causality is not the only game in town, and synchronicity, with its acausal connections, begins to look less like a mystical anomaly and more like a natural feature of a participatory universe. Jung and Pauli did not live to see their theory fully developed, but they planted a seed, and that seed is beginning to sprout. A new generation of scientists and philosophers is exploring the intersection of consciousness and physics, developing theories like integrated information theory, which proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of certain kinds of information processing systems, and orchestrated objective reduction, which suggests that consciousness arises from quantum processes in the microtubules of neurons. These theories are still speculative, still controversial, but they are moving in the direction that Jung and Pauli pointed toward. A recognition that consciousness is not an accident, not an illusion, but a core feature of the universe, as real and as fundamental as space, time, and energy. The unshakable logic of synchronicity is this: if mind and matter are two aspects of a single reality, then it is not only possible but inevitable that they will sometimes mirror each other. The boundary between them is permeable, and in moments of heightened awareness, heightened emotion, or heightened need, the barrier dissolves and the two worlds communicate. You are not a powerless observer in a random universe. You are a participant in a meaningful cosmos, a cosmos that listens, that responds, that guides. The signs are there, waiting for you to see them. The question is not whether the universe is speaking. The question is whether you are listening. The cultivation of synchronicity begins not with action, but with preparation. And the first step in that preparation is the formulation of a meaningful question. This is not a trivial exercise, and it is not about asking the universe for a new car or a winning lottery ticket. Synchronicity is not a cosmic vending machine that dispenses favors on demand. It is a guidance system, a compass that points toward meaning, and it responds to questions that arise from the depths of your being, questions that carry emotional weight, existential urgency, and a genuine need for direction. The quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. A shallow question receives a shallow response, or no response at all. A deep question, a question that touches the core of your identity and your purpose, activates the mechanism of synchronicity and opens a channel of communication between your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, and the larger field of meaning that Jung called the unus mundus. What makes a question meaningful? It must be personal, specific, and emotionally charged. It must be a question that you do not know the answer to, a question that represents a genuine crossroads in your life. What should I do with my life is too vague. Should I quit my job and start a business? Is better but still lacks emotional specificity. I feel trapped in a career that drains my soul, and I dream of creating something that matters, but I am paralyzed by fear of failure and financial insecurity. What is the next step I need to take? This is a meaningful question. It contains context, emotion, and a clear request for guidance. It is the kind of question that your unconscious mind can work with, the kind of question that sets in motion a search for patterns and symbols that will lead you toward an answer. The act of formulating the question is itself a psychological event. When you articulate a question with clarity and intention, you are focusing the energy of your consciousness like a laser beam. In the language of neuroscience, you are priming your brain's reticular activating system, the RAS, a network of neurons in the brainstem that acts as a filter for sensory information. Every second, your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of data from your environment, sights, sounds, smells, sensations. and the RAS decides which of those bits are important enough to reach your conscious awareness. The RAS is programmable. When you buy a new car, suddenly you see that model everywhere on the road, not because there are more of them, but because your RAS has been programmed to notice them. The same principle applies to synchronicity. When you hold a meaningful question in your mind, you are programming your RAS to notice information, events and patterns that are relevant to that question. But the RAS is only part of the mechanism. Jung proposed that the question also activates the unconscious mind, and the unconscious begins a search through its vast database of symbols, memories, and archetypes for patterns that match the emotional signature of the question. The unconscious does not think in words or logic. It thinks in images, symbols, and metaphors. It communicates through dreams, through slips of the tongue, through sudden insights that seem to come from nowhere. And it communicates through synchronicity by drawing your attention to events in the outer world that mirror the symbols and patterns it has found in the inner world. The meaningful question is the seed, and synchronicity is the flower that blooms when the conditions are right. The question must be held, not just asked once and forgotten. This is crucial. You do not send an email to the universe and then close your inbox. You carry the question with you like a tuning fork, a resonant frequency that hums in the background of your awareness. You think about it before you fall asleep. You revisit it in your journal. You let it simmer in the depths of your mind, allowing your unconscious to work on it while your conscious mind is occupied with the tasks of daily life. This sustained attention creates a field of intention, a gravitational pull that attracts relevant information and relevant events into your orbit. It is not magic, it is focus. But in a universe where mind and matter are entangled, focus is a form of power. Jung emphasized that the question must be authentic. You cannot trick the universe, and you cannot trick your unconscious. If you ask a question that you do not really care about, or if you ask a question that your ego wants answered but your soul does not, the mechanism will not engage. The unconscious knows the difference between a genuine quest for meaning and a superficial desire for comfort or validation. It responds to authenticity, to vulnerability, to the willingness to confront the unknown. This is why synchronicities often occur during times of crisis or transition, when the ego's defenses are down and the deeper self can break through. If you want to cultivate synchronicity, you must be willing to ask the questions that scare you, the questions that challenge your assumptions, the questions that demand growth and transformation. The meaningful question is also a declaration of readiness. By asking the question, you are signaling to your unconscious and to the universe that you are ready to receive an answer, and that you are willing to act on that answer. This is a contract, a pact between your conscious and unconscious selves. If you ask for guidance and then ignore the guidance when it arrives, the channel closes. The unconscious learns that you are not serious, and it stops sending messages. But if you ask for guidance and then pay attention, if you honor the signs and take action based on the insights you receive, the channel opens wider. The synchronicities become more frequent, more specific, more undeniable. You enter into a feedback loop with the universe, a dialogue that grows richer and more nuanced over time. There is a paradox at the heart of this process, and it is a paradox that every seeker must navigate. On one hand, you must hold the question with intention and focus, programming your RAS and activating your unconscious. On the other hand, you must let go of attachment to a specific outcome. You must be open to the possibility that the answer you receive will not be the answer you expected, or even the answer you wanted. The universe does not always give you what you ask for. It gives you what you need. Synchronicity is not about wish fulfillment. It is about alignment with your deeper purpose, your soul's trajectory, your place in the larger pattern. If you are clinging to a specific outcome, you will miss the signs that point in a different direction. The art is to hold the question with passion and to release the answer with trust. This is where the concept of active imagination, another of Jung's techniques, becomes relevant. Active imagination is a method of dialoguing with the unconscious by allowing images, symbols, and narratives to arise spontaneously in your mind and then engaging with them consciously. You might visualize yourself walking through a landscape and encountering figures or objects that represent aspects of your psyche. You ask them questions, and they answer, not in the voice of your conscious ego, but in the voice of the unconscious. This practice trains you to recognize the language of the unconscious, to distinguish between the chatter of the ego and the wisdom of the deeper self. And it prepares you to recognize synchronicity when it occurs, because synchronicity is the unconscious speaking through the outer world in the same symbolic language it uses in dreams and active imagination. The meaningful question is the key that unlocks the door, but it is not the only key. You must also create the conditions for synchronicity to occur, and those conditions are both internal and external. Internally, you must cultivate a state of receptivity, a quiet, open awareness that allows the signals to come through. This means reducing the noise in your mind, the constant stream of thoughts, worries, and distractions that drown out the subtle whispers of the unconscious. Meditation, journaling, time in nature, and any practice that quiets the ego and opens the channel to the deeper self will increase your sensitivity to synchronicity. Externally, you must place yourself in environments and situations where novelty and chance encounters are possible. Synchronicity often involves other people, unexpected meetings, overheard conversations, or books that fall off the shelf at the right moment. If you spend all your time in the same routines, in the same places, with the same people, you limit the universe's ability to send you signs. You must be willing to explore, to take risks, to step outside your comfort zone and into the unknown. The question is the seed, but the soil must be fertile. You are preparing yourself to receive a message, and that preparation involves both mental focus and mental openness, both intention and surrender. You are tuning your consciousness to the frequency of the universe, and the meaningful question is the dial that sets the station. Once the question is formulated and held with the right combination of passion and detachment, the stage is set. The unconscious begins its search, the RS begins to filter, and the universe begins to respond. The synchronicities will come, not on your schedule but on theirs, and your task is to be ready, to be watchful, to be willing to see the signs when they appear. The next step is learning how to recognize them, how to distinguish a true synchronicity from the random noise of everyday life, and that is the art of active observation. Once the meaningful question has been planted in the fertile soil of your consciousness, the next step is to cultivate the practice of active observation, a state of heightened awareness that allows you to recognize the signs when they appear. This is not passive waiting. It is an engaged, dynamic process of paying attention to the patterns, anomalies, and resonances that emerge in your daily life. The universe is always speaking, but most people are not listening because they have been trained to dismiss the subtle as insignificant and the strange as random. Active observation is the antidote to this blindness. It is a protocol for tuning your perception to the frequency of synchronicity, for training your mind to see the invisible threads that connect your inner world to the outer world, and for recognizing the moments when the boundary between the two dissolves. The first component of active observation is the deliberate priming of your reticular activating system, the RAS. As discussed earlier, the RAS is the brain's filter, the gatekeeper that decides which sensory inputs reach your conscious awareness. By holding your meaningful question in your mind, you have already begun to program the RAS to notice information that is relevant to that question. But you can amplify this process by consciously directing your attention to the kinds of patterns that synchronicity tends to take. Synchronicity is not random. It follows certain signatures, certain recurring motifs that Jung observed across thousands of cases. The most common signatures are repetition, anomaly, and emotional resonance. By training yourself to notice these three patterns, you increase your sensitivity to synchronistic events and reduce the likelihood that you will dismiss them as mere coincidence. Repetition is the most obvious signature of synchronicity. You see the same number repeatedly on clocks, license plates, receipts, page numbers. You hear the same phrase from different people in different contexts within a short span of time. You encounter the same symbol or image in your dreams, in a book you are reading, and in a conversation with a stranger. This kind of repetition is statistically improbable, and it carries a sense of intentionality, as if the universe is tapping you on the shoulder and saying, "Pay attention to this." Jung called this the law of seriality, and he observed that certain symbols and themes tend to cluster together in time, appearing again and again until the message is received. The number itself, or the phrase itself, may not be inherently meaningful. The meaning arises from the context, from the question you are holding, and from the emotional response the repetition evokes in you. Anomaly is the second signature. Synchronicity often involves events that are unusual, unexpected, or out of place. A book falls off a shelf and opens to a page that contains the exact answer to your question. You meet someone in an improbable location who turns out to have the information or connection you need. You experience a technical glitch or a missed train that leads to an encounter or an insight that changes your trajectory. These anomalies disrupt the smooth flow of causality, and they create a sense of dissonance, a feeling that something strange is happening. The rational mind tries to explain them away. It's just a coincidence, it's just luck. But the intuitive mind recognizes them as signals. The anomaly is the universe breaking its own rules to get your attention, and your task is to resist the urge to rationalize it away, and instead to ask, what is this event trying to tell me? Emotional resonance is the third and most important signature, because it is the confirmation mechanism that distinguishes a true synchronicity from a random coincidence. Not every repetition or anomaly is synchronistic. Sometimes a number appears repeatedly because it is common, or because you are unconsciously seeking it out. Sometimes an unusual event occurs that has no deeper meaning. It is simply an outlier in the statistical distribution of events. The way you distinguish a true synchronicity is by the emotional response it evokes. A synchronicity produces a specific feeling, a sensation that Jung described as numinous. It is a feeling of awe, of chills running down your spine, of sudden clarity or recognition. It is an intuitive click, a sense of rightness, a feeling that something significant has just happened. This emotional response is not a product of your conscious mind. It arises from the unconscious, from the deeper self that recognizes the symbol and understands its meaning. When you feel that click, that is the confirmation that the event is for you, that it is a message from the unconscious and the universe, and that you should pay attention. The practice of active observation, then, is a practice of noticing repetition, anomaly, and emotional resonance, and then pausing to reflect on the meaning. This requires a shift in your default mode of perception. Most people move through life on autopilot, their attention absorbed by their phones, their worries, and their habitual routines. They are not present. They are lost in thought, replaying the past or rehearsing the future. In this state, synchronicities pass by unnoticed, like radio signals that your receiver is not tuned to pick up. Active observation is the practice of being present, of bringing your attention back to the here and now, and of engaging with your environment as if it were alive, intelligent, and communicating with you. It is a form of mindfulness, but with a specific purpose: to see the signs. One practical technique for cultivating active observation is to carry a small notebook with you throughout the day, a synchronicity log, and to write down every instance of repetition, anomaly, or emotional resonance that you notice, no matter how trivial it seems. Do not judge or analyze in the moment. Simply record the event, the time, and the context. At the end of the day, review your log and look for patterns. You may find that certain symbols or themes recur across multiple entries, and these are the threads you follow. You may find that an event that seemed insignificant in the moment takes on new meaning when viewed in the context of the question you are holding. The act of writing itself is powerful. It signals to your unconscious that you are paying attention, and it trains your RAS to notice more. Another technique is to practice what Jung called active imagination, in real time as you move through your day. When you encounter something unusual, or when a symbol catches your attention, pause and ask yourself, if this were a symbol in a dream, what would it mean? Dreams and synchronicities speak the same language, the language of the unconscious, and the techniques you use to interpret dreams can be applied to waking life. If you dream of a bridge, you might interpret it as a symbol of transition, a passage from one state to another. If you encounter a bridge in your waking life, in a context that feels charged with meaning, you apply the same interpretation. The bridge is not just a physical structure, it is a message from the unconscious, a sign that you are in a period of transition and that you need to cross over to the next stage of your journey. The practice of active observation also requires you to resist the tyranny of the rational mind, the voice that insists on explaining everything in terms of causality and probability. The rational mind is a powerful tool, but it is not the only tool, and it is not suited for every task. When you experience a synchronicity, the rational mind will immediately try to dismiss it. It's just a coincidence. It's just pattern recognition. You're reading too much into it. This is the ego's defense mechanism, its attempt to maintain control and to keep the world predictable and safe. But synchronicity is not safe. It is disruptive. It challenges the ego's worldview, and it demands that you surrender to a larger intelligence, a deeper wisdom that operates beyond the reach of logic. The practice is to notice the rational mind's objections, to acknowledge them, and then to set them aside. You are not abandoning reason. You are expanding your toolkit to include intuition, emotion, and symbolic thinking. There is a delicate balance to strike here, and it is the balance between openness and discernment. On one hand, you must be open to the possibility that the universe is communicating with you, that the events in your life are not random, and that meaning can arise from unexpected places. On the other hand, you must avoid the trap of apophenia, the tendency to see patterns where none exist, to assign meaning to everything, and to become lost in a hall of mirrors where every event is interpreted as a sign. This is a real danger, and it is one that Jung warned about. The ego can become intoxicated by synchronicity, can start to believe that it is the center of the universe, that every event is about it, and that it has special powers or special knowledge. This is a form of inflation, a psychological state where the ego identifies with the unconscious and loses touch with reality. The antidote to apophenia is the criterion of emotional resonance. A true synchronicity has a quality of numinous clarity. It stops you in your tracks, and it evokes a deep, visceral response that is unmistakable. A false pattern, a product of apophenia, may be intellectually interesting, but it lacks that emotional punch. It feels forced, contrived, or superficial. The practice is to trust your intuition, to listen to the feeling in your body, and to distinguish between the signal and the noise. If an event feels like a synchronicity, if it evokes that sense of awe and recognition, then treat it as such, even if you cannot explain it rationally. If an event does not evoke that feeling, then let it go, even if it seems to fit the pattern intellectually. The feeling is the compass, and the feeling is always right. Active observation is not a passive state of waiting for signs to appear. It is an active engagement with the world as a living, intelligent field of meaning. It is a practice of presence, of curiosity, of openness to the unexpected. It is a willingness to see the world not as a collection of dead objects governed by blind laws, but as a web of relationships, a tapestry of symbols, a conversation between your inner self and the outer cosmos. And it is a practice that deepens over time. The more you pay attention, the more you see. The more you see, the more you trust. The more you trust, the more the universe responds. You enter into a feedback loop, a dance with synchronicity, and the dance becomes a way of life. You are no longer a passive observer of random events. You are an active participant in a meaningful universe, and every moment is an opportunity to receive guidance, to gain insight, and to align yourself with the deeper pattern that is unfolding through your life. The path of synchronicity is not without its pitfalls, and even those who understand the principles can fall into traps that distort the practice and lead to confusion, delusion, or stagnation. Carl Jung was acutely aware of these dangers, and he spent considerable effort documenting the fatal mistakes that people make when they begin to work with synchronicity. These mistakes are not random. They follow predictable patterns, and they arise from fundamental misunderstandings about the nature of the phenomenon, the role of the ego, and the relationship between the conscious and unconscious mind. Understanding these errors is as important as understanding the practice itself, because the difference between a synchronicity that guides you toward growth and a false pattern that leads you astray is often subtle, and the consequences of confusing the two can be profound. The first and most common error is apophenia, the tendency to see patterns and connections where none exist, to assign meaning to random events, and to become lost in a labyrinth of false signals. Apophenia is a natural function of the human brain. We are pattern recognition machines, and we are wired to find order in chaos, to connect the dots, and to create narratives that make sense of our experience. This capacity is what allows us to learn, to predict, and to navigate a complex world. But it is also what makes us vulnerable to seeing faces in clouds, hearing messages in static, and interpreting coincidences as cosmic signs when they are nothing more than statistical noise. The line between synchronicity and apophenia is not always clear, and the ego, desperate for meaning and validation, can easily cross that line without realizing it. The key to distinguishing synchronicity from apophenia is the quality of the experience, specifically the numinous emotional resonance that Jung described. A true synchronicity has a weight, a gravitas, a sense of significance that is unmistakable. It stops you in your tracks. It evokes a physical response. Chills, tears, a sudden expansion of awareness. It feels like a revelation, a moment of clarity that cuts through confusion and illuminates the path forward. Apophenia, by contrast, is intellectually interesting, but emotionally flat. You can construct an elaborate narrative connecting disparate events, but the narrative feels forced, contrived, like a puzzle you are trying to solve, rather than a truth you are discovering. The difference is the difference between a genuine insight and a clever interpretation. And the only reliable guide is your intuition, your body's felt sense of rightness or wrongness. The danger of apophenia is that it can become a self-reinforcing loop. Once you start seeing patterns everywhere, you begin to interpret every event as confirmation of the pattern, and you ignore or rationalize away any evidence that contradicts it. This is confirmation bias, and it is one of the most powerful cognitive distortions. You become trapped in a hall of mirrors, where every reflection confirms your belief, and you lose touch with reality. In extreme cases, this can lead to paranoia, grandiosity, or a complete break from consensus reality. Jung saw this in some of his patients, individuals who became so convinced of their special connection to the universe that they lost the ability to function in the ordinary world. They saw signs in everything, and they interpreted those signs as evidence of their unique destiny or their cosmic mission, when in fact they were projecting their own unconscious fantasies onto the world. The antidote to apophenia is discernment, humility, and a willingness to question your interpretations. When you experience what you believe to be a synchronicity, pause and ask yourself, is this event genuinely significant, or am I forcing a connection because I want it to be significant? Does this interpretation serve my growth, or does it serve my ego's need for validation? Am I open to the possibility that I am wrong? If you cannot answer these questions honestly, if you feel defensive or resistant to questioning your interpretation, that is a red flag. True synchronicity does not need to be defended, it speaks for itself. And true wisdom is always accompanied by doubt, by an awareness of the limits of your knowledge and the fallibility of your perception. The second fatal mistake is ignoring the message, dismissing a genuine synchronicity as just a coincidence, because it challenges your assumptions, threatens your comfort, or demands that you take action you are not ready to take. This is the opposite error of apophenia, and it is equally dangerous. Where apophenia is seeing too much, this is seeing too little. It is the rationalist's trap, the refusal to acknowledge anything that cannot be explained by causality and probability, the insistence that the universe is a dead mechanical system with no room for meaning or intelligence. People who fall into this trap experience synchronicities, sometimes profound and undeniable ones, but they explain them away, they minimize them, they file them under weird but meaningless, and move on. The cost of ignoring synchronicity is the cost of ignoring guidance from your deeper self and the universe. Synchronicity is not random. It arises in response to a need, a question, a crossroads. It is the unconscious mind's way of sending you a message, and it is the universe's way of confirming that you are on the right path or redirecting you when you are on the wrong one. When you ignore a synchronicity, you are rejecting that guidance. You are saying, I don't trust you, I don't trust the process. I would rather rely on my limited conscious understanding than open myself to a larger intelligence. And the universe, respecting your free will, stops sending messages. The channel closes, and you are left to navigate by reason alone, cut off from the intuitive symbolic wisdom of the unconscious. Jung observed that synchronicities often occur at moments of crisis or transition, when the old structures of your life are breaking down, and you are being called to evolve. These are the moments when you need guidance the most, and these are the moments when the unconscious sends the clearest signals. If you ignore those signals, if you cling to the familiar and refuse to take the leap, you may avoid short-term discomfort, but you pay a long-term price. You remain stuck in a pattern that no longer serves you, and you miss the opportunity for transformation that the synchronicity was pointing toward. The ignored synchronicity becomes a missed opportunity, a road not taken, and you are left with a vague sense of regret, a feeling that you let something important slip through your fingers. The practice here is to take synchronicities seriously, even when they are inconvenient, even when they challenge your plans, even when you do not fully understand them. This does not mean acting impulsively or abandoning all logic. It means giving the message the respect it deserves, sitting with it, reflecting on it, and allowing it to inform your decisions. Sometimes the message is clear and immediate. Quit your job, move to a new city, end this relationship. Sometimes the message is more subtle, a gentle nudge in a certain direction, a suggestion to explore a new path or to pay attention to a certain area of your life. The practice is to listen, to trust, and to act, even when the action feels risky or uncertain. The third fatal mistake is passivity, the belief that synchronicity is something that happens to you, a gift from the gods that requires no effort or response on your part. This is the magical thinking trap, the idea that if you just wait and pay attention, the universe will solve all your problems and deliver your desires on a silver platter. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of how synchronicity works. Synchronicity is not a substitute for action, it is a guide for action. It does not do the work for you. It shows you where to direct your effort. It is a compass, not a vehicle. You still have to walk the path. Jung emphasized that synchronicity is often a call to action, a signal that the time has come to make a move, to take a risk, to step into the unknown. The synchronicity confirms that the move is aligned with your deeper purpose, that the universe supports it, but the move itself is yours to make. If you receive a sign that points you toward a new career, the sign does not create the career for you. You still have to update your resume, network, apply for jobs, and navigate the challenges of the transition. The synchronicity gives you the courage and the confirmation you need to take those steps, but it does not take the steps for you. Passivity in the face of synchronicity is a form of spiritual bypassing, a way of avoiding responsibility by outsourcing your decisions to the universe, and the universe, recognizing that you are not willing to do your part, stops engaging. The signs become less frequent, less clear, and eventually they stop altogether. The practice is to recognize that synchronicity is a partnership, a co-creation between you and the larger intelligence that guides your life. You ask the question, you pay attention to the signs, and then you act on the guidance you receive. The action completes the circuit. It is the proof that you are serious, that you are willing to engage, that you are ready to participate in the unfolding of your destiny. And when you act, the universe responds with more guidance, more synchronicities, more confirmation that you are on the right path. The feedback loop accelerates, and you move from passivity to agency, from victimhood to co-creation. You are no longer waiting for your life to happen. You are actively shaping it in partnership with the deeper intelligence that knows where you need to go. Beyond the three fatal mistakes lies a deeper layer of understanding, a master's insight that can transform your relationship with synchronicity and unlock its full potential. This insight comes from one of Carl Jung's most profound observations, that dreams are the primary language of the unconscious, and that synchronistic events in the outer world are often physical manifestations of symbols and patterns that first appeared in dreams. If you want to become truly adept at recognizing and interpreting synchronicity, you must learn to work with your dreams, because the dream world and the waking world are not separate realms. They are two theaters in which the same drama is being performed, two screens on which the unconscious projects the same images, and the synchronicity is the moment when the two screens align and the image appears in both places at once. Jung's entire psychological system is built on the foundation of dream analysis. He believed that dreams are not random neural firings or the brain's way of processing the day's events, but are meaningful communications from the unconscious, messages encoded in symbols and metaphors that reveal the hidden dynamics of your psyche. Every dream is a snapshot of your inner state, a report from the unconscious about what is happening beneath the surface of your conscious awareness. And every dream is also a prediction, a glimpse of the patterns that are trying to emerge in your life, the potentials that are seeking to be actualized. When you ignore your dreams, you are ignoring the most direct and reliable source of guidance from your deeper self. The connection between dreams and synchronicity is not theoretical, it is empirical, documented in thousands of case studies from Jung's clinical practice. A patient dreams of a specific symbol, a golden scarab beetle, a black snake, a burning house, and within days or even hours, that symbol appears in the outer world in a form that is too specific to be coincidental. The patient is describing the dream to Jung, and a real scarab beetle taps on the window. The patient dreams of a snake, and the next day they encounter a snake on a hiking trail, or they overhear a conversation about snakes, or they see a snake in a piece of art. The patient dreams of a house on fire, and they receive news of a crisis that mirrors the emotional content of the dream. These are not random events. They are the unconscious mind orchestrating a dialogue between the inner and outer worlds, using the dream as the blueprint and the synchronicity as the physical manifestation. The reason this happens is that the unconscious mind is not confined to your skull. In Jung's model, the unconscious extends beyond the personal to the collective, and beyond the collective to the unus mundus, the unified field of mind and matter. When the unconscious generates a symbol in a dream, that symbol is not just a mental image, it is a pattern, a frequency, a node in the web of meaning that connects all things. And if the symbol is charged with enough emotional energy, if it represents a pattern that is urgent and significant for your development, the unconscious will find a way to manifest that pattern in the outer world, to bring it into your waking experience so that you cannot ignore it. The dream is the announcement and the synchronicity is the confirmation. This insight has profound practical implications. If you want to cultivate synchronicity, you must start by paying attention to your dreams. This means keeping a dream journal, a notebook by your bedside, where you record your dreams immediately upon waking, before the memory fades. The act of writing is crucial. It signals to the unconscious that you are listening, and it trains your brain to remember more dreams. Over time, you will begin to notice patterns, recurring symbols, and themes that weave through your dreams, like threads in a tapestry. These are the symbols that are most likely to appear in synchronistic events, and by becoming familiar with them, you prepare yourself to recognize them when they manifest in the outer world. The practice is to treat your dreams as a map, a set of instructions from the unconscious about what to pay attention to in your waking life. If you dream of water, start noticing water in your environment: rivers, rain, the ocean, even a glass of water on a table. If the water appears in a context that feels charged with meaning, that is a synchronicity. If you dream of a specific person, pay attention to that person in your waking life, or to people who remind you of them, or to situations that evoke the same emotional quality. The dream is priming your RAS, but it is also priming the universe, setting in motion a pattern that will seek to complete itself in the physical world. Your task is to be ready, to be watchful, to recognize the pattern when it appears. Jung also observed that the most powerful synchronicities often occur when a dream symbol is accompanied by a strong emotional charge, particularly an emotion that the conscious mind has been repressing or avoiding. The unconscious uses synchronicity to break through the ego's defenses, to force the conscious mind to confront a truth it has been denying. A woman dreams of a black dog, a symbol in Jungian psychology that often represents the shadow, the repressed, instinctual side of the psyche. She dismisses the dream as meaningless. The next day, a black dog appears on her doorstep, injured and in need of care. She cannot ignore it. She must take action. And in caring for the dog, She is forced to confront the parts of herself that she has been neglecting, the instinctual, emotional, vulnerable parts that the black dog symbolizes. The synchronicity is not just a sign, it is a catalyst, a trigger for psychological growth. The master's tip then is to use your dreams as a guide for interpreting synchronicity, and to use synchronicity as a guide for understanding your dreams. The two are mirrors of each other, and by working with both you gain a stereoscopic view of your inner landscape. When you experience a synchronicity, ask yourself, have I dreamed about this symbol or this theme recently? What was the emotional context of the dream? What was the unconscious trying to tell me? And when you have a powerful dream, ask yourself, where might this symbol appear in my waking life? What would it mean if it did? This practice of cross-referencing dreams and waking events creates a feedback loop that accelerates your psychological development and deepens your connection to the unconscious. There is also a temporal dimension to this relationship between dreams and synchronicity. Jung observed that dreams are often precognitive, not in the sense of predicting specific events, but in the sense of revealing patterns that are in the process of unfolding. A dream is a snapshot of the future potential of your psyche, a glimpse of where the unconscious is trying to take you. And the synchronicity is the moment when that potential begins to actualize, when the pattern that was latent in the dream becomes manifest in the world. This is why synchronicities often feel inevitable, as if they were always meant to happen. They were meant to happen. The unconscious has been preparing for them, and the dream was the first sign that the pattern was on its way. The practice of working with dreams and synchronicity together is not easy. It requires discipline, patience, and a willingness to engage with the symbolic language of the unconscious. But the rewards are immense. You gain access to a source of wisdom and guidance that is far deeper and more reliable than your conscious mind. You learn to navigate your life not by logic and planning alone, but by intuition, by feeling, by a sense of alignment with the deeper currents that flow beneath the surface of events. You become fluent in the language of the soul, and you discover that you are never alone, never lost, because the unconscious is always speaking, always guiding, always pointing the way forward. The dreams are the voice, and the synchronicities are the hand that reaches out from the invisible world to touch you, to remind you that you are seen, that you are known, and that you are part of a story far larger and far more meaningful than you ever imagined. The bridge between Carl Jung's psychology and the cutting edge of modern physics is not a metaphor. It is a literal convergence of two fields that are both grappling with the same fundamental mystery, the relationship between consciousness and reality. For decades, scientists dismissed synchronicity as unscientific, as a relic of mystical thinking that had no place in a rigorous materialist worldview. But the discoveries of quantum mechanics have shattered that worldview, revealing a universe that is far stranger, far more interconnected, and far more responsive to observation than the classical physics of Newton and Einstein could accommodate. And at the heart of quantum mechanics lies a phenomenon that is eerily similar to synchronicity: quantum entanglement, the instantaneous correlation between particles that remain connected across space and time in ways that defy our conventional understanding of causality. Quantum entanglement was first predicted by the equations of quantum mechanics in the 1930s, and it was so bizarre that even Einstein refused to believe it. He called it spooky action at a distance, and he spent the last decades of his life trying to prove that quantum mechanics was incomplete, that there must be hidden variables that could explain the correlations without requiring instantaneous connections across space. But experiment after experiment has confirmed that entanglement is real. When two particles become entangled, they form a single quantum system, and measuring the state of one particle instantaneously determines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. If you measure the spin of one entangled electron and find it spinning up, the other electron will instantaneously spin down, even if it is on the other side of the universe. The correlation is not transmitted by any signal, it is instantaneous, faster than light, and it violates the principle of locality, the idea that objects can only be influenced by their immediate surroundings. This is not science fiction, this is established science, confirmed by decades of experiments and now harnessed in technologies like quantum computing and quantum cryptography. But the implications of entanglement are still not fully understood, and they are deeply unsettling for anyone who believes in a universe of separate, independent objects interacting through local forces. Entanglement suggests that at the deepest level of reality, separation is an illusion. Particles that were once connected remain connected, no matter the distance, and the universe is not a collection of isolated parts, but a unified whole, a web of relationships where every part is connected to every other part. This is precisely the worldview that Jung proposed with his concept of the unus mundus, the unified field of mind and matter from which all phenomena emerge. The connection between entanglement and synchronicity is not just an analogy, it is a hypothesis about how the universe works. If particles can remain connected across space in a way that defies causality, then why couldn't mental events and physical events remain connected in the same way? If the boundary between two entangled particles is permeable, allowing them to influence each other instantaneously, then why couldn't the boundary between mind and matter be permeable, allowing thoughts and dreams to influence physical events in ways that appear acausal? Jung and Pauli proposed that synchronicity is a macroscopic manifestation of the same principle that governs entanglement at the quantum level, the principle of a causal connection, the idea that events can be correlated not because one causes the other, but because they are both expressions of a deeper, unified pattern. This hypothesis is still speculative, and it is not yet accepted by mainstream science, but it is gaining traction among a new generation of physicists and consciousness researchers who are willing to take seriously the possibility that consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of brain activity, but a fundamental feature of the universe. One of the key figures in this movement is the physicist David Bohm, whose theory of the implicate order provides a framework for understanding how entanglement and synchronicity might be related. Bohm proposed that the universe we perceive, the explicate order, is like the surface of an ocean, and beneath it lies the implicate order, a deeper dimension where everything is enfolded into everything else. In the implicate order, there is no separation, no distance, no time. Everything is present everywhere, and the distinctions we perceive in the explicate order are projections, unfoldings of patterns that exist in the implicate order. In Bohm's model, entanglement is a moment when the implicate order becomes visible, when the hidden connections that exist at the deepest level of reality break through into the explicate order and manifest as a correlation between particles. And synchronicity in this framework is a moment when the implicate order becomes visible in the realm of human experience, when the hidden connections between mind and matter break through and manifest as a meaningful coincidence. Both phenomena are windows into the implicate order, glimpses of the unified field that underlies all of reality. And both phenomena suggest that the universe is not a machine, but an organism, a living, intelligent system where every part is connected to the whole and where consciousness plays a fundamental role in shaping what we perceive as reality. Another physicist who has explored the connection between quantum mechanics and consciousness is John Wheeler, one of the giants of 20th century physics and a collaborator of Niels Bohr. Wheeler proposed that the universe is participatory, that reality is not a pre-existing stage on which events unfold, but a co-creation between the observer and the observed. He developed a thought experiment called the delayed choice experiment, which demonstrated that a decision made by an observer in the present can retroactively determine the behavior of a particle in the past. This suggests that time is not as linear as we assume, that the future can influence the past, and that the act of observation is not passive, but creative. Wheeler's famous phrase, "it from bit," encapsulates this idea. The physical world, the it, emerges from information, the bit, and information requires an observer to actualize it. Without consciousness, without observation, the universe exists in a state of pure potential, a cloud of probabilities, and it is the act of measurement, the act of conscious attention that collapses the wave function and brings reality into being. This is a radical departure from the classical worldview, and it is a view that aligns perfectly with Jung's understanding of synchronicity. If consciousness plays a role in collapsing the wave function, in determining which potential becomes actual, then it is not a stretch to propose that consciousness can also play a role in organizing events in the macroscopic world. When you hold a meaningful question in your mind, when you focus your attention and your intention on a particular outcome or a particular pattern, you are not just observing reality, you are participating in its creation. You are collapsing the wave function at the level of your personal experience, selecting from the infinite field of possibilities the events that align with your inner state. And when your inner state resonates with a pattern in the external world, the two lock into phase, and a synchronicity occurs. This does not mean that you can control reality with your thoughts, that you can manifest a Ferrari by visualizing it hard enough. Synchronicity is not magic, and it is not a violation of the laws of physics. It is a natural phenomenon that operates according to principles we are only beginning to understand. The key principle is resonance, the idea that systems that vibrate at the same frequency will naturally align and influence each other. In music, if you strike a tuning fork and hold it near another tuning fork of the same pitch, the second tuning fork will begin to vibrate in sympathy, even though there is no physical contact between them. This is resonance. And in the universe, if your consciousness vibrates at a certain frequency, if you hold a certain emotional state or a certain intention with enough intensity, the external world, which is not separate from your consciousness but is part of the same unified field, will begin to resonate in sympathy, and events will organize themselves in ways that reflect your inner state. The physicist Fritjof Capra, in his book The Tao of Physics, explored the parallels between quantum mechanics and Eastern mysticism, and he concluded that the new physics is revealing a worldview that the mystics have known for millennia, that the universe is an interconnected whole, that the observer and the observed are not separate, and that consciousness is not a byproduct of matter, but is woven into the fabric of reality. Capra's work was controversial when it was published, but it has become increasingly influential as more scientists recognize that the materialist paradigm is inadequate to explain the phenomena we observe at the quantum level. The universe is not a machine, it is a web, a network, a hologram, and every part contains the whole. This holographic principle, which has been proposed by physicists like Leonard Susskind and Gerard 't Hooft, suggests that the information contained in a volume of space can be encoded on the boundary of that volume, like a hologram where a two-dimensional surface contains the information of a three-dimensional object. If the universe is holographic, then every part of the universe contains information about the whole, and the boundaries between parts are not as solid as they appear. This is another way of understanding the unus mundus, the unified field, where mind and matter are not separate, but are two aspects of the same information structure. And it is another way of understanding synchronicity, as a moment when the holographic nature of reality becomes apparent, when you see that the event happening out there is not separate from the pattern unfolding in here, but is a reflection, a projection, a holographic image of the same underlying information. The scientific bridge between Jung and quantum physics is still being built, and there is much that we do not yet understand. But the direction is clear. The old mechanistic worldview is crumbling, and a new worldview is emerging, one that recognizes consciousness as fundamental, that sees the universe as an interconnected whole, and that understands synchronicity not as a supernatural anomaly, but as a natural phenomenon that reveals the deeper structure of reality. You are not a powerless observer in a random universe. You are a participant in a participatory universe, a co-creator of the reality you experience, and the synchronicities in your life are proof that the universe is listening, that it is responding, and that you are part of a story far larger and far more meaningful than the materialist paradigm could ever accommodate. The most famous case of synchronicity in Carl Jung's career, the story that he told again and again to illustrate the phenomenon and to demonstrate its transformative power, is the story of the golden scarab beetle. This is not an abstract theory or a philosophical speculation. This is a real event, witnessed by Jung and his patient, and it is a perfect example of how synchronicity operates, how it breaks through the defenses of the rational mind and how it can catalyze profound psychological change. The story has become legendary, and it deserves to be, because it encapsulates everything that synchronicity is and everything it can do. Jung was treating a young woman who was highly educated, highly rational, and highly resistant to the therapeutic process. She had come to him because she was stuck, trapped in a rigid intellectual worldview that left no room for emotion, intuition, or the irrational. She approached her life and her therapy with the same cold logic she applied to everything else, analyzing her problems from a safe distance, never allowing herself to feel, never allowing herself to be vulnerable. Jung recognized that her rationalism was a defense, a way of protecting herself from the unconscious, from the chaotic, unpredictable forces that she could not control. And he knew that until she could break through that defense, until she could open herself to the irrational, the therapy would go nowhere. One day, the woman came to her session and described a dream she had the night before. In the dream, she was given a golden scarab beetle, a piece of jewelry in the shape of a beetle, and the beetle was glowing, luminous, precious. She described the dream in her usual detached, analytical manner, treating it as a curiosity, something to be dissected and explained away. Jung listened, and he recognized the symbol immediately. The scarab beetle is one of the most ancient and powerful symbols in human history, a symbol of rebirth, transformation, and resurrection. In ancient Egypt, the scarab was associated with the god Khepri, who rolled the sun across the sky each day, and it represented the cycle of death and renewal, the eternal return. The fact that this woman, who had no knowledge of Egyptian symbolism, had dreamed of a golden scarab was significant. It was a message from the unconscious, a signal that she was on the verge of a transformation, that the rigid structures of her ego were about to crack open and allow something new to emerge. As the woman was describing the dream, Jung heard a tapping sound on the window behind him. It was a soft, insistent tapping, like someone knocking to get in. He turned around, and there, on the outside of the window, was a large insect trying to get into the room. Jung opened the window and the insect flew in. It was a rose chafer, a beetle that is the closest thing to a golden scarab that exists in Switzerland, where Jung was practicing. The beetle is rare, and it is not native to the region, and it is highly unusual for such a beetle to appear at a window, let alone at the exact moment when a patient is describing a dream about a golden scarab. Jung caught the beetle in his hand, turned to the woman and said, "Here is your scarab." The effect on the woman was immediate and profound. Her rational defenses shattered. She could not explain the event. She could not rationalize it away. The coincidence was too specific, too improbable, too perfectly timed to be dismissed as chance. In that moment, she was confronted with the reality that the universe is not a cold, mechanical system, that there are forces at work beyond the reach of logic, and that her dreams, her inner world, were connected to the outer world in ways she had never imagined. The synchronicity broke through her intellectual armor and allowed her to feel, to be vulnerable, to open herself to the unconscious. And from that moment, the therapy progressed. She began to engage with her emotions, to explore her dreams, to confront the parts of herself she had been repressing, and she underwent a profound transformation. Jung used this story to illustrate several key points about synchronicity. First, that synchronicity is not random. It arises in response to a psychological need, a moment of crisis or transition when the unconscious is trying to send a message to the conscious mind. The woman's dream of the scarab was the unconscious's way of announcing that a transformation was imminent, and the appearance of the real beetle was the universe's way of confirming that message and forcing her to take it seriously. Second, that synchronicity is acausal. The dream did not cause the beetle to appear, and the beetle's appearance did not cause the dream. The two events were parallel expressions of a single underlying pattern, a pattern that existed in the unus mundus and manifested simultaneously in the inner world of the dream and the outer world of physical reality. Third, and most importantly, that synchronicity has transformative power. It is not just a curiosity, not just a strange coincidence to be noted and filed away. It is a catalyst, a trigger for psychological change. The scarab beetle is a symbol of rebirth, and the synchronicity itself was a rebirth for the woman. It shattered her old worldview, her old defenses, and it opened her to a new way of being, a new way of relating to herself and to the world. This is the ultimate purpose of synchronicity. Not to provide answers, not to grant wishes, but to facilitate growth, to push you beyond the limits of your current understanding, and to guide you toward the next stage of your development. The story of the scarab also illustrates the role of the therapist or the guide in the process of synchronicity. Jung did not create the synchronicity, he did not summon the beetle, but he recognized it when it appeared, and he used it as a tool in the therapy. He opened the window, he caught the beetle, and he presented it to the woman with the words, "Here is your scarab." He made the connection explicit, and he gave the woman permission to take the event seriously, to see it as meaningful rather than dismissing it as a fluke. This is the role of the guide, to help you see the signs, to validate your experience, and to encourage you to trust the process. The scarab story has been told and retold countless times, and it has become a touchstone for anyone who studies synchronicity. It is proof that the phenomenon is real, that it can be witnessed and documented, and that it has the power to change lives. But it is also a reminder that synchronicity is rare, that it cannot be forced or manufactured, and that it arises only when the conditions are right, when the unconscious has something urgent to communicate, and the conscious mind is ready, however reluctantly, to listen. You cannot make a scarab beetle appear on demand, but you can create the conditions that make synchronicity more likely. By holding a meaningful question, by paying attention to your dreams, by cultivating a state of open awareness, and by being willing to see the world as a living, intelligent field of meaning rather than a dead, mechanical system. The golden scarab is not just a symbol, it is a promise. It is a promise that the universe is not indifferent, that your inner world matters, and that when you are ready to transform, the universe will send you a sign, a confirmation, a guide. And when that sign appears, your task is to recognize it, to honor it, and to allow it to do its work, to crack open the shell of your old self and allow the new self to emerge, just as the scarab beetle emerges from its cocoon, transformed and ready to fly. You have journeyed through the science, the psychology, and the practice of synchronicity. And now you stand at the threshold of a new understanding, a new way of being in the world. The synthesis of this knowledge is not merely intellectual, it is existential. It is a shift in your fundamental relationship with reality, a transformation of your identity from a separate, isolated ego navigating a random universe to a conscious participant in a living, intelligent cosmos. This is the promise that synchronicity offers, and this is the power it unlocks. The power to live in a world where meaning is not imposed by your thoughts, but is discovered in the patterns that connect your inner world to the outer world, where every event is a potential message, and where you are never truly alone because the universe itself is your guide, your teacher, and your partner in the unfolding of your destiny. The old worldview, the mechanistic materialist paradigm that has dominated Western thought for centuries, is a worldview of separation and isolation. In that worldview, you are a biological accident, a random configuration of atoms that happen to achieve self-awareness, floating through a cold, indifferent universe where events unfold according to blind chance and impersonal laws. In that worldview, meaning is an illusion, a story you tell yourself to cope with the existential terror of a meaningless existence. You are alone, adrift, and powerless, a victim of circumstance, waiting for luck to smile upon you or for tragedy to strike without warning. This is the worldview that breeds anxiety, depression, and despair, because it strips life of purpose and reduces your existence to a brief flicker of consciousness in an infinite void. Synchronicity shatters that worldview. It reveals that the universe is not a machine but an organism, not a collection of dead matter, but a living field of consciousness and meaning. It demonstrates that you are not separate from the world, but are woven into its fabric, that your thoughts, your dreams, and your intentions are not isolated events happening inside your skull, but are nodes in a vast network of relationships that connects all things. It proves that meaning is not an illusion, but is a fundamental feature of reality, as real as gravity or electromagnetism, and that the universe is not indifferent, but is responsive, intelligent, and engaged in a constant dialogue with you. You are not a stranger here. You are a participant, a co-creator, a holographic fragment that contains the whole, and every moment of your life is part of a larger pattern, a cosmic story that is unfolding through you and with you. This shift in understanding is not just a change in belief, it is a change in perception. Once you see the world through the lens of synchronicity, you cannot unsee it. The coincidences that you once dismissed as random noise become signals, messages from the deeper intelligence that guides your life. The patterns that you once ignored become visible, and you begin to recognize the invisible threads that connect events, the hidden order that orchestrates the dance of your days. You move from a state of passive observation to a state of active participation, from victimhood to agency, from isolation to connection. You realize that your life is not a series of disconnected moments, but is a coherent narrative, a story being written by a deeper intelligence that knows where you need to go, even when your conscious mind is lost. The power of this realization is immense. It transforms your relationship with uncertainty, with fear, with the unknown. In the old worldview, uncertainty is a threat, a source of anxiety, because it represents the possibility of chaos, of disaster, of events spinning out of control. But in the worldview of synchronicity, uncertainty is an opportunity, a space of potential where the new can emerge, where the universe can surprise you with guidance, with insights, with connections that you could never have predicted or planned. You stop trying to control every outcome, and you start trusting the process, trusting that the universe is working with you, not against you, and that even the setbacks, the detours, and the apparent failures are part of the pattern, part of the path that is leading you toward your highest potential. This trust is not blind faith, it is earned through experience. Every time you pay attention to a synchronicity, every time you act on the guidance you receive, every time you see the pattern unfold and realize that the universe was speaking to you all along, your trust deepens. You accumulate evidence, not the kind of evidence that can be measured in a laboratory, but the kind of evidence that transforms your life, the evidence of your own experience, the evidence of the signs that appeared at the right moment, the evidence of the doors that opened when you followed the guidance, the evidence of the sense of alignment, of flow, of being in the right place at the right time. This evidence is personal, subjective, and undeniable, and it builds a foundation of trust that allows you to navigate your life with confidence, with courage, and with a sense of purpose. The synthesis of power is also a synthesis of responsibility. Once you recognize that you are a participant in the creation of your reality, that your consciousness is not a passive observer, but an active force that shapes the patterns you experience, you can no longer play the victim. You cannot blame the universe for your circumstances, and you cannot wait for someone else to save you. You are the one who holds the meaningful question. You are the one who pays attention to the signs. You are the one who acts on the guidance. You are the one who co-creates your destiny. This is not a burden, it is a liberation. It is the recognition that you have power, that your choices matter, that your intentions have consequences, and that you are not at the mercy of fate, but are a partner in the unfolding of your life. And finally, the synthesis of power is a synthesis of connection. In the old worldview, you are isolated, cut off from others, cut off from nature, cut off from the cosmos. But in the worldview of synchronicity, you are connected to everything. The boundary between self and other, between inner and outer, between mind and matter, is revealed to be permeable, and you begin to experience yourself not as a separate entity, but as a wave in the ocean of consciousness, a node in the cosmic network, a thread in the tapestry of existence. This sense of connection is not abstract. It is visceral, felt in the body, experienced in moments of awe, of wonder, of sudden recognition that you are part of something infinitely larger and infinitely more meaningful than your individual life. And this connection is the antidote to the loneliness, the alienation, and the despair that plague the modern world. The empowering message at the heart of synchronicity is simple, and it is this: the universe is not happening to you, it is happening for you and with you. The events of your life, the coincidences, the chance encounters, the unexpected twists and turns are not random. They are not the result of blind luck or impersonal fate. They are part of a dialogue, a conversation between your consciousness and the larger intelligence that pervades the cosmos. This intelligence is not a distant external God sitting on a throne in the sky, judging you, rewarding you, or punishing you. It is the deeper layer of your own being, the unconscious mind that extends beyond the personal to the collective and beyond the collective to the unified field of the unus mundus. It is the intelligence that knows your purpose, that sees the patterns of your life from a perspective that transcends time and space, and that is constantly sending you messages, guiding you, nudging you, pointing you toward the path of your highest potential. The coincidences in your life are not glitches, they are features. They are not bugs in the operating system of reality, they are the operating system itself, revealed in moments when the veil between the surface world of separate objects and the deep world of unified meaning becomes thin. Every synchronicity is a reminder that you are not alone, that you are seen, that you are known, and that you are loved by the universe itself. This is not a sentimental New Age platitude. This is a rigorous scientific and psychological truth, grounded in the work of one of the greatest minds of the 20th century and supported by the discoveries of modern physics. You are not a cosmic orphan, you are a cosmic citizen, and the universe is your home. This message is empowering because it restores your sense of agency and your sense of meaning. In a world that often feels chaotic, overwhelming, and out of control, synchronicity is a compass that points you toward the path that is uniquely yours. It is a reminder that you have a purpose, that your life is not an accident, and that the challenges you face, the questions you hold, and the dreams you dream are not irrelevant, but are part of a larger pattern that is unfolding through you. You are not drifting aimlessly. You are being guided, and the guidance is always available if you are willing to pay attention, to trust, and to act. The message is also empowering because it shifts the locus of control from external to internal. In the old worldview, you are at the mercy of external forces, the economy, the government, other people, the random events of a chaotic world. You are a victim, and your only hope is to protect yourself, to accumulate resources, to build walls, and to hope that luck is on your side. But in the worldview of synchronicity, the power is within you. Your consciousness, your intentions, your emotional state, your willingness to engage with the unconscious and to act on the guidance you receive. These are the factors that shape your experience. You are not powerless, you are powerful, and the power lies in your ability to tune your consciousness to the frequency of the universe, to recognize the signs, and to co-create your reality in partnership with the larger intelligence that guides your life. This does not mean that you can control everything, that you can manifest any outcome you desire, or that you will never face challenges or suffering. Life is complex, and the patterns that unfold are shaped by countless factors, many of which are beyond your individual control. But it does mean that you have influence, that your participation matters, and that you are not a passive victim of circumstances, but an active agent in the story of your life. You have the power to ask meaningful questions, to pay attention to the answers, and to act on the guidance you receive. You have the power to align yourself with the deeper currents of your being, to trust the process, and to navigate the uncertainties of life with courage and confidence. And you have the power to transform your relationship with reality, to move from a state of fear and isolation to a state of trust and connection. The empowering message is also a call to responsibility. With power comes responsibility, and the responsibility is to use the power wisely, to engage with synchronicity not as a tool for ego gratification, but as a tool for growth, for service, for alignment with your highest purpose. Synchronicity is not a magic trick that you use to get what you want. It is a guidance system that helps you become who you are meant to be. The signs point not toward comfort or convenience, but toward growth, toward the edges of your comfort zone, toward the challenges that will stretch you, test you, and ultimately transform you. The question is not, how can I use synchronicity to get what I want? But what is the universe trying to teach me? What is the next step in my evolution? What is the pattern that is trying to emerge through my life? And the empowering message is an invitation to trust. Trust is the foundation of the relationship between you and the universe, between your conscious mind and your unconscious, between your individual will and the larger intelligence that guides your life. Trust is not blind faith. It is a choice, a decision to believe that the universe is fundamentally benevolent, that the patterns you experience are meaningful, and that the guidance you receive is leading you toward your highest good, even when the path is unclear, even when the signs point in a direction you did not expect, even when the journey is difficult and the outcome is uncertain. Trust is the willingness to let go of control, to surrender to the process, and to allow the deeper intelligence to do its work. And trust is the key that unlocks the full power of synchronicity, because without trust, you will always second-guess the signs, dismiss the messages, and cling to the illusion of control. The world you live in is a world of meaning, not a world of random chaos. The events of your life are chapters in a story, not disconnected accidents. The universe is a living, intelligent presence, not a dead mechanical system. And you are a participant in the unfolding of that story, a co-author, a co-creator, a partner in the cosmic dance. This is the empowering message of synchronicity, and this is the truth that will set you free. You are not alone, you are not powerless, and you are not lost. The universe is speaking to you every day in 1,000 different ways, and all you have to do is listen, trust, and act. The signs are there, waiting for you to see them. The guidance is available, waiting for you to receive it. And the transformation is possible, waiting for you to embrace it. The only question is, are you ready? The final challenge, the call to action that will transform this knowledge from theory into lived experience is simple, and it is this. Commit to the 7-day synchronicity log. For the next 7 days, you will become a scientist of your own consciousness, an explorer of the invisible threads that connect your inner world to the outer world. You will carry with you a small notebook, a digital note on your phone, or any tool that allows you to record your observations in real time. And you will hold one meaningful question, one question that matters to you, one question that represents a crossroads, a challenge, or a quest for direction in your life. This is not a superficial question. This is the question that keeps you up at night, the question that your soul is asking, the question that demands an answer. For 7 days, you will pay attention. You will notice every repetition, every anomaly, every moment of emotional resonance that crosses your path. You will log every instance where you see the same number, hear the same phrase, encounter the same symbol, or experience a chance meeting that feels charged with meaning. You will not judge, you will not analyze, you will not dismiss. You will simply record. At the end of each day, you will review your log, and you will look for patterns. You will ask yourself, what is the universe trying to tell me? What symbols are recurring? What themes are emerging? What connections can I see between my inner state and the outer events? And at the end of the 7 days, you will have a map, a record of the dialogue between you and the universe, and you will have evidence, your own personal evidence, that synchronicity is real. This challenge is not a game. It is a commitment. It is a declaration that you are ready to see, that you are willing to engage, and that you are prepared to act on the guidance you receive. It is a contract between you and your deeper self, a pact that says, I am listening, I am paying attention, I am ready to participate in the unfolding of my destiny, and the universe, recognizing your commitment, will respond. The synchronicities will come, not because you are forcing them, but because you are creating the conditions for them to occur. You are tuning your consciousness to the frequency of meaning, and the universe will meet you there. At the end of the 7 days, I challenge you to share your experience. Come back to this video, scroll down to the comments, and share the most surprising, the most undeniable, the most transformative synchronicity you experienced during the week. Share the symbol that appeared again and again, the message that broke through, the moment when you felt the universe wink at you and confirm that you are not alone. Your story will inspire others, and it will contribute to the collective evidence that synchronicity is not a rare, mystical phenomenon, but is a natural feature of a participatory universe available to anyone who is willing to pay attention. Comment with your story, and let us build a community of seekers, of explorers, of modern masterminds who are learning to decode the cosmic signals and to navigate their lives with the guidance of the universe itself. And as you embark on this journey, remember the 3 pillars of the practice: the meaningful question, the active observation, and the willingness to act. Hold your question with passion and release the answer with trust. Pay attention to the repetitions, the anomalies, and the emotional resonances. And when the sign appears, when the synchronicity breaks through, honor it, reflect on it, and let it guide your next step. Do not wait for certainty. Do not wait for proof. Do not wait for permission. The universe has already given you the sign. Your task is to see it and to act. Before you go, if this video has opened your eyes to the hidden order of the universe, if it has given you a new lens through which to see your life, if it has ignited a spark of curiosity or a flame of recognition, then show your support. Subscribe to this channel, because we are building a library of forgotten knowledge, a modern mystery school for the architects of the new paradigm. We are decoding the protocols of human potential, translating the wisdom of the masters into the language of science and technology, and providing you with the tools to become the person you were meant to be. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a transmission, because every video is a key, a piece of the puzzle, a step on the path toward mastery. And if you found value in this deep dive into synchronicity, then like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, someone who is searching for meaning, someone who feels lost in a random world and needs to be reminded that they are part of a larger story. Your share could be the synchronicity that changes someone's life, the sign they were waiting for, the confirmation that they are not alone. And finally, leave a comment. Tell me what resonated with you, what challenged you, what questions you still have. Your engagement fuels this channel, and your voice is part of the conversation, part of the collective exploration of what it means to be human in a universe that is far more mysterious and far more meaningful than we have been taught to believe. The journey does not end here. It begins here. You have been given the map, the tools, and the challenge. The universe is waiting. The signs are appearing and the dialogue has begun. The only question that remains is, will you listen? Will you trust? Will you act? The answer is yours to give, and the transformation is yours to claim. Go forth, hold your question, pay attention to the signs, and remember, nothing is random. Your mind is connected to everything. The universe is speaking to you, and you are exactly where you need to be. Comment connected if you are ready to see the invisible threads. The cosmic code is waiting to be deciphered, and you hold the key.